Good morning.
Good morning.
Kalimera. One of my favorite Christmas carols that we just sang is Good King Wenceslas. A lot of times most people know the tune and everything, but a lot of people maybe have heard the first line, just like most of the rest of the Christmas carols, but oftentimes past the first, you really don't hear the rest. But in this Christmas carol, Saint Wenceslas, which became a saint later on, he sees a man from his window, from his palace or wherever he was, but it must have been a lofty height, and he sees a man down in the snow, and it looks like he's starving or hungry. And he asks his servant, "Who is that guy?" And he sees him walking away, and his servant says he lives by this fountain, St. Agnes Fountain. So the saint and his servant, he tells the saint he wants to go to this man's house and take wood and fuel and food and take care of this guy. He was moved for some reason. So they go out in the harsh and the cold, and they start going, and in the carol, the wind's ripping and it's cold. And they're walking and trudging through the snow. The servant says, "I can't go any farther. I'm going to pass out. I'm going to die. I'm going to get frozen to death." And St. Wenceslas says, "Don't worry. Just follow in my footsteps and let me be your guide." And in the hymn it says, as he was walking in the saint's footsteps, he felt warmth. And they made it to take care of this man who lived by this fountain. One of the key attributes to the Orthodox faith is obedience. Listening, hearing what's being said. Because listening and hearing is often two very distinct different things. But one of the key attributes to the faith, not the religion, to the faith, is obedience. In today's scripture, we read about now Jesus being born, Joseph, and it's believed that Jesus was about 2 or a little under 2 years old when this was transpiring. The wise men go to Herod, and Herod wants to worship the king. And he tells the wise men to go, and once he finds him, to send a message back. And in a dream, the wise men know that they're not supposed to report back. And after they visit the baby in the manger, Jesus, they leave and don't give any information to King Herod. And King Herod, in a fit of rage, does something unspeakable. But before this happens, an angel comes to Joseph. And he tells Joseph, "Rise up, go into the land of Egypt, flee." Now Joseph, and a lot of times in the movies, is like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. Should I do it or whatever?" But really in the scriptures, as you just heard, Joseph just rises up and says, let's go. I just had a dream. The angel just told me, and we're going to go. And he takes his family and he escapes. Obedience. He listens immediately. There's no thinking about it. He just listens to the angel of the Lord that comes to him in the dream. Now Herod, when he finds out that the wise men had deceived him, in a fit of rage, he mirrors what Ramses does in the Old Testament. Ramses, because he is afraid of the deliverer, takes all the children and decides to throw all the firstborn children into the Nile. So Herod, in his fit of rage and jealousy, because of the deliverer, the newborn king, who would threaten his rule, orders his men to go and kill every child that is 2 years young or old or young. Can you imagine? Those of us who have children, can you imagine that? Having soldiers come into your home, chasing you through the streets, and putting your child to death? They weren't nice about it. They didn't go hide somewhere and do it. They just went systematically through every house and did it. It's unfathomable to me. You fast forward 2,000 years, the same thing again happens in 1973 with the signing of this order that permits abortion. And they say since then, in 11 million, some ungodly amount of children have been put to death under this act. It always depends on whose feet we are following. We who are Orthodox Christians are oftentimes, when we are born into the church, we are named after a saint, Saint Demetrius. And when you become a catechumen, and if you don't have a name that fits under one of the saints, then you have to be careful in selecting one, because you want to select a saint that will attribute to you, or that you can reflect on, or lean on, or whatever the case is, that will resonate with you. It's called obedience for that saint that did the things that he did, and that he died in order that he would become a saint. Whether miracles were attributed or the actions were attributed to him. And in today's Christmas carol, Saint Wenceslas literally told his servant to follow in his footsteps so they could survive the trip through the snow. So whose feet do we walk after? Whose footsteps do we follow? We believe that the saints, they followed after Jesus' footsteps. That's why they became saints. And a lot of times, we as human beings say, there is no way I can measure up to Jesus. I can't. So that's why we end up praying for intercession to the Virgin Mary, and we pray for intercession to the saints. But how many times do we who are Christians decide to stray off the path and end up finding ourselves alone and desolate in the woods, in the darkness? I spoke to a young person a few weeks ago, and I said, what defines you? If I was going to ask you what defines you, what is it that defines you? And they told me the first word that came to their mind was darkness. Where is she? Where is she? That's the first word that comes to mind. Darkness. I said, okay, well, if you remove that, what are you then? I don't know. I don't know, Father, I don't know. So darkness and I don't know are the things that come to her mind. Who are we following? Who are we stepping after? Jesus himself tells us we are to take up the cross and follow him. We celebrate the cross every single year, a couple times a year. We take up the cross and we follow him. Now we who are married, when I got married, when I understood my marriage, I was like the point man leading my family into battle. There's a landmine, don't step on it. There's a landmine, don't step on it. There's a landmine, don't step on Now my spouse has the choice. She can say, oh, I'm not going to step on it. I'm going to follow directly behind his footsteps. Or she's going to veer off to the left or to the right, and she's going to end up stepping on a landmine. And then once you have children in the mix, then you have somebody else. Now, if you're not leading your spouse correctly, hopefully your spouse is doing a good job. Because if both of you are to the left and to the right, then your children have no idea where to go. Whose footsteps do we walk in? Whose footsteps should we be walking? What is more important than walking in the footsteps of Christ? What is more important than walking in the footsteps towards your salvation, towards paradise? I know oftentimes we all get bound down and bogged down by, I'm on vacations, I'm tired, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I don't feel good. We all do that. We have family over. We all have all these things that are on top of us. Every one of us. There's not a person here that hasn't had something or some excuse for them not to follow in the footsteps of Christ. We all make those choices all the time. I do. Sometimes I walk so far off into my own direction, I end up stepping on a landmine and almost killing myself. But then I always have somebody, somewhere, that always helps me direct me back to the path that I've got to be on, the path that I've got to take. Jesus Christ is our point man. And if we who are Christians are following behind him and keeping our sights on him, on his back, carrying that cross, we will never be led astray. That doesn't say that there's not going to be hardships. Obviously, as Jesus was walking and carrying his cross, it was leading him to his death. There's no promise anywhere, and if you can prove me wrong, please tell me. There's no promise anywhere that Jesus says, if you follow me, it's going to be a bed of roses. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful because your life is going to be falling into line and your life is going to be perfect. And there's not going to be any suffering. No, Jesus says if you follow me, you're actually going to have this wonderful and great path that you're walking, but it's going to be full of pain and suffering and sorrow. And then the end result will be something wonderful, great, and something that cannot be measured. Even if our families fall away from us, even if our spouses fall away, our children fall away, even if anybody falls away from our lives, as long as we keep focused on Jesus Christ, there is nothing that can come after us. No weapon formed against us shall prosper. And it says, according to the scriptures, if we lead people astray, our children, it is like a millstone being hung around our neck, and we should be thrown into the sea. It doesn't matter what happens to us in this life. It matters what our goal and what we look forward to in this life. We can be sick and dying and only have 2 or 3 weeks to live, and we can glorify God with our whole heart. We can glorify God with our whole soul. And when the angel comes and gives us that voice, then we're prepared to hear it. And I'll end with this. You know I carry on sometimes. We obviously live in this world that's going in a definitely wrong direction. We live in a country that is definitely going in a place where I have never seen it go before. And I've said this statement before. I know when I was a kid, I used to hear my family say, there's no way the world can get any worse. And then I say, there's definitely no way the world can get any worse. But in the short time that I've lived, I have seen the world get a little bit worse. a little bit more, a little bit more. What was accepted 10 years ago is no longer accepted now, and what's accepted now would have never been accepted 10 years ago. And as Isaiah, his words resound over and over and over and over in my mind. In the end days, what people call evil will be good, and the good will be called evil. But it's up to us to follow our saints in that deep snow. Just like King Wenceslas told his servant, follow me. That's what our faith is about. Picking somebody that you can follow, that can lead you to Jesus Christ. Because at one point, they're not going to be needed anymore, and then Jesus is going to be the only one that you need. But until then, you need to find a way to step in the deep snow. So no matter what is happening to you at this very moment, no matter what struggles, no matter what helplessness, no matter what pain, no matter what depression that you may feel, there is somebody out there praying for you. There is somebody out there that loves you and cares for you and wants to see you succeed. No matter what we're going through, we have the most powerful forces in the universe on our side. Jesus Christ, first of all, his mother, and all the saints pulling for us. What more do you need? So today, as you prepare yourself to come up and receive the gifts of our King, I want you to think to yourself about what I have been doing. Not me. I'm telling you to think about this yourself. What have I been doing? Have I been following in the footsteps of my saint? Because once you turn back, you're following in the footsteps of the enemy. You're following in the footsteps of places and treading in places that you do not want to belong. So rejoice in the fact that Jesus has already walked that footstep, walked that path, and has gained the conquering of the soul. Because the battle has already been won. Now let us glorify him today and praise his name. Amen. Amen.